Alrighty. We should be all set up here. Let's transition that over as the players choose their first fighter. Alright, we have Burgs versus, I'm gonna butcher that name. I'm gonna go with Moss, in the safe side. Making their first selection, this is a pools match. We are nearing the end of the timeline for pools. Specter Knight versus Shovel and Shield Knight, alright, Season 4 face-off. Between protagonists, no less. This will be exciting. Shovel and Shield Knight are kind of a defensive tactician. They actually are a lot like a Shoto from traditional fighting games, video fighting games at least. They have a number of interesting and tricky moves that can catch the opponent by surprise, affectionately referred to as gotchas. As for Specter Knight, there's a few different ways to play him, but he is generally a very aggressive fighter who has to manage his resource flow carefully, but can advantage chain the opponents to land strike after strike after strike, and then exceed to become even more powerful both on offense and defense. However, his exceed cost is 4, and he needs gauge to use his exceed ability, so it tends to take him almost the entire game to be able to flip, because his economy doesn't really support generating gauge on his front side. He does interact with the sealed area, so he plays a unique kind of mini-game where he can seal cards face down, uniquely. Every other character who seals cards does it face up. The sealed area, unless cards are explicitly sealed face down, can be checked by any player and is not ordered. So Specter Knight is able to conceal information from his opponent this way, using it to give him an advantage in the late game, as they do not know what options he actually has remaining, and can't land a guaranteed reading. Alright. Coin toss. I might need to keep that up if one of the players is using chat. Looks like Specter Knight will be up first. Look at those card backs. My goodness. Specter Knight card backs, in my opinion, are top tier. And Shovel and Shield are no less adorable. Alright. Mulligans are complete. Turn one goes to Spectre. Card back to your list. These are competing for top tier in my opinion. I think Specter Knight is easily top tier. I'm not so sure about Shovel and Shield, but it's up there. Alright, so Specter Knight is one of many characters in Season 4 with access to an unusually threatening opener. Well, one of a decent handful anyway. You can also create any kind of mix-up he desires by using his character ability, sealing 2 cards face down to give his attack before Advance 2, effectively increasing the range of his attack. He chooses to do so, beginning to set up the sealed area. Oh, right. I should probably put up the fighter names on our little list. Alright. Shovel and Shield also have uniquely threatening openers because of their character ability. Alright, we have a Spike with Advance 2 versus a Discovery. So Discovery is before Advance 1, but because of Shield Knight's effects, Shovel Knight can use this to Advance 1 or 2. By doing so, he will move to range 2, land his hits, and then Specter Knight, due to his advance effect, will advance 2 and miss. It's a good start for Shovel and Shield. Where was I? If you're wondering about the name on the side, EXSK is an affectionate nickname for Shovel Knight and Shield Knight because, well, they both have the initials SK and there's 2 of them. So they're EX. It's just a bad joke. That doesn't actually mean anything. Alright. Shovel Knight building up that cage fairly quickly. This is actually quite dangerous for Specter Knight. Once Shovel and Shield have access to 3 gauge, they will have... Whoops. Shield Boomerang live. One of the overall most powerful ultras in the game. Although it doesn't deal the most damage, it has an effect which says the opponent cannot hit you if their attacks range is calculating from 2, 3, or 4 from Shield Knights. Basically, if you're in range of this attack, you don't hit them. This is very potent because it can disable essentially any opponent threats, depending on the context. Alright, we have the Quick Step boost. Advance Retreat 1, so you know their action. Chooses to retreat. Backs up to range 2. EX attack. Specter Knight spent a lot of resources in that opening whiff, so as mentioned before, he kind of struggles for economy if he doesn't hit the right boost at the right time. He has to rush through his deck pretty quickly, not unlike Sea Viper. He does have draw, but they're all on. But it's all on boosts that want him to strike or on his attacks. So he has to be pretty aggressive. On defense at range 2, he does have a decent option that is speed 7. He wild swings, doesn't hit it. Hits throwing sickle, which will lose the speed tie to shovel drop. Oof. Shovel Knight advances 2. This is his Tatsu, or Whirlwind Kick, if you're familiar with the term from Shotos. And he gets a bonus for moving past the opponents, like most Tatsus do, dealing a total of 7 damage. Brutal. Gets that 3rd gauge. Currently is not threatening Shield Boomerang because Shield Knight is not at range 2 to 4 from Specter Knight. Spectre preps. Shovel Knight preps. Both players sitting back to reload. Spectre preps again, must not have access to those draw boosts. That is very unfortunate. He can't really afford to take the turns off like this. Shovel Knight and Shield Knight are a more defensive fighter, and they generally can afford to sit back like this, as long as they're keeping a few defensive options available. Shovel Knight strikes with 1 card. Has access to a wide variety of mix-ups here. Specter Knight has a range 1 spike, as we refer to it, a Dread Talon, which lets him handily beat any defensive move. It looks like here it was the fast option. He played Focus, so he'll do well. Buckler Blow is a force special. Shovel and Shield must spend 1 force when it is revealed to validate. If it's a wild swing, you can choose not to, just like with Ultra attacks. Hits, doesn't do any damage because of that 2 armor, and doesn't push because of Focus's effect that says opponents cannot move you. So Specter Knight wins that pretty cleanly. Not strictly cleanly because Shovel and Shield do still get the gauge. Alright, it's now Specter Knight's turn. He is at a much needed economic advantage. He's going to strike. Does not appear to be using his character ability. Cross versus cross. He will win that speed tie, pop for 3, and retreat. Okay, setting up range 4, which is generally a better range for him, although Shovel and Shields, due to Shield Knight's ability, can still use things like Assault and Dive very effectively from this range. They prep. Holding onto that gauge. Shield Boomerang is fairly threatening at this point. Specter Knight is now in range. That looks like a Sealing or an EX attack, hard to say. That is a seal. Alright. Total of, I believe, 4 cards in that sealed area now. We'll have before advance 2 tacked onto this. Shovel and Shield choosing how to respond. One card, what do we got? Trying to cross out, and is successful. They will retreat 2. Inspector will advance 2 and miss, as Shovel Knight is now out of range. Alright, that makes it Shovel Knight's turn. Looks like a boost. Yep, attacks on the opposite side of Shield Knight do not hit you. A potent ranged dodge tool. Full defense. That said, if Specter Knight chooses to initiate, he will probably end up advancing onto or past Shield Knights, since he doesn't actually have much in the way of ranged moves. His attacks tend to be effective range because he advances with them instead of actually range, where he's printed ranges, 3 or greater. Alright, he preps, pass and turn back to Shovel and Shield, who also prep. Once again, the player is sitting back to reload. This is an indication they either don't have or aren't using their more economic boosts. Specter Knight has 2 boosts, which let him draw a bunch of cards and strike. Shovel Knight has the boost on Shield Boomerang, which is often preserved just to maintain the threat of Shield Boomerang. But Shovel of Hope is a, as we say, noted good boost. And that kind of resource gain can really accelerate your recovery from when, after spending a lot of resources, you're going all out on offense or defense. Specter Knight evidently checking his own sealed area, trying to remember what he seals. Alright, looks like that is a parry coming in. So, name a card, the opponent must discard a copy of that card or reveal a hand without it. Names and successfully discards a Spider Scythe, indicating Shovel Knight is afraid of, or at least wants Specter Knight to think that they're afraid of, that fast option. So this is Specter Knight's DP, so to speak. DP is as in Dragon Punch or Shoryuken. It's another Shoto type move, although Specter Knight is not generally a Shoto. But this is an above curve attack at range 2, so it can effectively, it can on defense be just about anything at range 2, is the idea. Now it does still lose to focus and sweep the defensive maneuvers. This is a common trait of DPs, basically. They are good as surprise defensive maneuvers. They're not good against opponents who simply bait them out with something that's ready to block the hit and hit back. Yeah, there's Gathering Darkness. That boost is really incredible for Specter Knight. It's unfortunate he lost access to that copy. Well, Specter Knight considering his next move. Specter checking that discard pile. A lot of the Shovel and Shield matchup, no matter who you're playing, is determined by Shield Boomerang, how much you respect it, how much the opponent chooses to believe that you'll respect it, and similar. It is a decisive card, very centralizing to Shovel and Shield's kit. Never mistake it for their only option, however. They can always hold it. Looks like we have a seal and strike. A little bit of lag here. Setting 1 card, sealing 2. That is going to give Specter Knight's attack before advance 2. Meaning full defense is a non-starter. Shovel and Shield considering their response. Alright, responds to the sweep, and Bounding Soul. Before you move 2 more spaces to strike plus 2 power, specifically designed to synergize with Specter Knight's character ability. He'll advance 2 and hit for 6, but trade evenly with the sweep, which will respond with 6 damage in kind, since Shovel Knight is not stunned. Spectre must discard a card at random. Takes out a block. Specter Knight now has 3 out of the 4 gauge he would need if he wishes to exceed this game. 3 gauge, however, will allow him to avoid his ultras. Only 1 card in hand. Shovel Knight is pressing that advantage with a strike. Specter Knight respond with a card in his hand or Wild Swing. Wild Swing. Let's see what we get. Responds with an assault into Charge Slash. Alright. Specter Knight will move first, hitting for 4. Shovel Knight will then respond with a 6 power hit, since Shovel Knight initiated. Trading up. But that does get Specter Knight his 4th gauge, meaning if he wishes to exceed, he can. Although, of course, he won't be able to use the succeed mode effectively without an extra card stopped. Does choose to exceed, and now has the option of swapping his deck in sealed area. Looks like we have 14 in deck and 6 in sealed. Chooses not to swap them. So those 6 will remain sealed unless he pulls them back into play using his boost effects later in the game. Alright, Specter Knight can no longer use his character ability by sealing 2 cards from hand. Instead, he will have to spend a gauge to activate it. However, in return, he can activate it even when his opponent initiates, and whenever he activates it, he gets an additional +1 power. Also, his art looks much cooler. What's this? Quick switch, spinning a force. Shovel and Shield swap places, then take another action. And striking. Spectre considering his response, he only has 2 cards in hand, so his options are limited. Depending on what he drew, he may still decide to respond from hands. Now, the fact that Shovel and Shield wanted to swap first is interesting. Makes a number of plays likelier because they don't lose to some of Specter Knight's potentially remaining options. Of course, Shovel can't be sure what Specter Knight has left exactly because of that sealed area. Greetings, Ogre. Greetings, Tekopo. Tekopo? Not sure. Spectre reviewing what Shovel and Shield have available, considering their response. Probably exceeded a little bit early. That's fine though. As soon as he gets 1 gauge, he'll have access to that effect. Let's see what happens. Response from hands. Plays a Spin Scythe into a Focus. That is very nice for Specter Knight. He will hit first and draw a card and then advance 4. He didn't swap Ogre. It's possible he just considered it the best time he was going to have to exceed. Like, there's times you just can't afford to take the action off. Alright, that gives Spectre some much needed range, and access to his character ability, which is a big deal. He can now use it on offense or on defense. So will he press the offensive, or nope, gathering more options. Alright. Spectre prepares. Looks like Shovel and Shield are either changing cards, moving, or exceeding. Let's see what happens. That is an exceed. Alright, as soon as they flip, Shovel Knight can place Shield Knight in any space on the board. Places it in his own space. Places her on his own space. And can now move her to any space as an action. Additionally, okay, not his own space, but the next space. Fair enough. Additionally, Shield Knight's ability is now upgraded to provide +2 armor if, after all hit effects, Shield Knight is between the source of the attack and Shovel Knight. Spectre Knight considering his options. Spectre Knight is probably at the advantage right now. Shovel Knight does not have 3 gauge and therefore cannot afford Shield Boomerang. Spectre Knight has 1 gauge and therefore can use his character ability. Shield Knight is threatening to use that +2 armor to Shovel Knight's advantage, but it might not help depending on what Spectre Knight decides to throw. We'll see. Looks like Spectre is planning on initiating. Yep, there it is. Going to use the character ability, or yep, there it is. Alright. So, Spectre Knight's attack will have +1 power and before advance 2. Alright, Shovel Knight responds. Is Bounding Soul into Shield Gong. Alright, Shield Gong is going to have 4 armor and 4 guard on it. Bounding Soul is going to have 7 power, dealing 3 damage, and then taking 4. Letting the incredibly tanky Shield Gong trade up. Still, Spectre still has access to that gauge and can still use his character ability even on defense. Looks like they are discussing how Shield Knight's ability works, or some other rules minutiae. As currently there are no decisions to be made. Yep. Shovel Knight has now taken the correct amount of damage. Will not be stunned, hits back, pushes 2 away from Shield Knights, and deals 4. Quite right. It is now Shovel Knight's turn. And I believe that's... yeah, they validated that last attack with Gauge, meaning they still are not threatening Shield Boomerang. Alright, Shovel Knight preps. And Specter Knight does the same. Again, neither player making use of those reload boosts, either because they want to preserve the attacks, or they just didn't draw them. Shovel Knight preps again. What's this? Move action, moving forward one space. Alright, that means that Specter Knight's character ability will now allow him to move on top of Shield Knights, negating the benefit of that armor. Also letting him threaten any number of attacks. Notable exceptions, of course, being, let's see, Dive, Spike, and Throwing Sickle, I believe is the name of the range 2-3 attack. Things are neck and neck here. Shovel Knight looking to initiate. Specter Knight can use his ability on defense. Question is if he will. Says the response. Does not spin Gauge. Is just playing a block. Alright. So Shovel Knight will land a hit, get that third Gauge, which is important for threatening Shield Boomerang. Sweep a card at random. That is Barrier Lantern. So always had to see an Ultra go, but it's probably not the more valuable of the two. Oh, what? Looks like they made an error during resolution. The sweep effect should have occurred before the force expenditure, but doesn't appear to have concerned anybody too much. Dark Inspector is one of the more technical characters in Season 4. I don't think he's complicated, per se. Like, I don't think he's one of the most technical to operate in Season 4. I do think he's fairly difficult to play effectively, though. Like, I think he's difficult, but not necessarily among the most complex in the season. Shovel and Shield Knight, I actually would say, are among the more complex characters in the season, along with Tinker Knight and Enchantress. Can you use the Exceeded ability on defense? Yes, you can. Pardon me, that's my phone going off. Alright, we have a Gauge expenditure on defense as Specter Knight. Sorry, on offense as Specter Knight. Blah. Alright, Assault. So Shovel Knight will actually come in first. This is pretty funny. Shovel Knight closes 2, hits for only 2, but then Spectre's character ability calls him to advance past Shield Knight, meaning Shovel Knight will gain the benefit of that armor. It is now Shovel Knight's turn. Alright, Shovel Knight preps. As does Spectre. Well, Shovel Knight has a lot of resources available. Full hand and 4 gauge. Depending on what boost he has access to, he might be trying to set up for a kill in the near future. That resource advantage could prove crucial, but so could Specter Knight's Exceed ability. Being able to attack before advance 2 onto an attack even on defense, especially with +1 power, means Specter Knight can still threaten lethal with a variety of moves here. Add to that, the Shovel Knight doesn't know what Specter Knight has available because of his face-down sealed cards, and the game is far from over. At least the mental game. Numerically, there will probably only be 1 or 2 more strikes left. But anyone could win them. Alright, Shovel and Shield striking. Spectre needs to choose that response, and then whether or not to use that character ability. Let's see what we get. No gauge expenditure. Alright, focus into Cross. Cross will deal no damage thanks to Shovel Knight's 4 armor, but will allow Spectre to retreat safely out of range. Shovel Knight draws a card. That did make it that much harder for Specter Knight to get past Shield Boomerang, and I believe we still have seen 0 copies drop. It is now Specter Knight's turn. Surprised you didn't spin gauge on that? Eh. Works either way. Alright, spinning gauge in this strike. Shovel and Shield choosing their response. Oops. And we have a response of Dive, which will lose the speed tie to Spin Scythe. Spectre advances 2, has 6 power, and will deal 4 damage after armor, closing the game in Spectre Knight's favor. Nicely played. Alright. Let me mark that up while the players sort things out. The Dive was played from hand, that is correct. Likely calling out a spike play would be my guess. Alright, that's game 1. Switch back to show a quick reminder of who's available. If you play an EX and the attack's invalid, the +1 stats apply to your replacement? No, they certainly do not. That's correct. If you execute more than one... Wait, what? EX do? If you play more than one attack in a single strike, such as with Legendary Taunt or Zoltic Seed ability, then boosts do not apply to those additional attacks, neither do your EX stats. You also cannot play EX attacks using those effects. Alright. Game 2. We have Dan versus EXSK once again. Let me put that up on the screen. Alright. Like Specter Knight, Dan tends to be aggressive. Unlike Specter Knight, Dan is particularly explosive. He only needs one gauge to really get going. He doesn't value his Exceed mode very highly, and he relies heavily on Wild Swings. That said, it's very possible to play the so-called Galaxy Dan, who is about building a significant hand size using Legendary Taunt to safely filter enemy options, and then reducing your hand with effects to land free Ultras later in the game. Alright, Shovel and Shield choosing to go first. Alright, Mulligan's complete, and Shovel and Shield are opening. Well, they have a very strong opening mix-up, but Dan can actually respond to it. He has a Speed 6 opener, Dankukyaku, allowing him to filter 2 of their 3 opening options. Sorry, 2 of their 4 main opening options. Dive and Assault. It does not effectively filter Shield Bounce or Discovery. They could also choose not to strike, a considerably less common opener for Shovel and Shield. Yep, there's the strike, 1 card from hands. So they're threatening, let's see, in ascending order of speed. Shovel Bounce, Dive, which are the same speed, Assault, and Discovery. EX Dankukyaku would beat everything, but, you know, you'd have to have EX Dankukyaku, which is pretty demanding. It would also lose to Bait if this was, for example, Sweep or Focus. Alright, Dan responds. It is Discovery into block. Okay, that'll be a quick 2 gauge for Shovel and Shield. 1 gauge for Dan. Making them both pretty threatening. Dan's threat is arguably higher at this point. Alright, adds that block to gauge. It is now Dan's turn. He's at range 2, which is his favorite range, with 1 card engaged and 5 cards in hands. If only he had fewer cards in hand, the world would be his oyster. Alright, we have Peak. Look at the top card of your deck. You may strike. If you don't, add it to your gauge. Notably, you do not have to strike with that card. You could strike from hands. It's also an easy way for Dan to build gauge. What'll be the decision? Alright, adds it to gauge, draws for an turn. Dan can now afford Legendary Taunt if he so chooses. Shovel Knight is striking with one card from hands. Dan considering his response. And correcting his life total. Presumably. Yep, there we go. So for those not familiar, Dan's character ability is your wild swings of critical +1 power and +1 speed. Critical is a Street Fighter mechanic, which is when you set your attack, you may spend one gauge to activate your critical effects. Otherwise, they don't exist. All right, we have Shovel Drop, which will trade evenly with a sweep. Shovel Knight advances 2, moves past to gain +2 power, hits for 6, and then takes 6 in return. Shovel Knight will lose a card. Dive, fairly low value. Dan now has 3 gauge, and as his hand size drops, his threat goes up. It is Dan's turn. He's at range 1. Although, Shovel and Shield now have 3 gauge, and Dan is squarely in range of Shield Boomerang. So that is now being threatened. Makes it Dan's turn. So Dan's character ability obviously encourages him to wild swing, spinning gauge to improve his stats. Not written on his character, however, is that he also values having a low hand size. This is because two of his 3 ultras, say that if he has no cards at hand, the gauge cost is reduced to 0. Striking with one card from hands, assault into focus, alright. They will trade. Dan is down to 3 cards in hands and has advantage. Shovel and Shield draw, they're at 2 cards in hands. Pretty low in options. Looks like Dan is trying to keep the pressure on. Will he strike again, is the question. That'll be a yes. Strikes from hand, 1 card. Whittle down that hand size. Legendary Taunt into Grasp. Alright. Legendary Taunt is a very interesting card. So, Shovel Knight will hit first, deal 2 damage after armor, push or pull 1 or 2. Afterwards, however, Dan will advance up to 3 spaces, optionally draw a card, and then play and execute an attack from his hands. Now, this is not actually allowed to play an EX attack. It was, I believe it was ruled differently very, very early, but that was quickly corrected, because it lets you play an attack, meaning one card. But basically, you get to play 2 attacks in the same strike. So let's see what he does. Advances 1 to reclaim his previous position. Does choose to draw a card. And what will he play from hands? Now, it is optional. If he actually has nothing in hand that will hit, or that he can afford, then he won't play anything. He only has 2 gauge after paying this cost. Alright, there you go. So the dive means he will now advance, hit at range 1, deal 5 damage, just like dive normally would. The legendary taunt itself does not hit, so it is discarded at the end of the strike. Dive did hit, so it goes to gauge. Alright, Dan is down to 2 cards in hand and has 3 gauge. Things are looking good. Shovel Knight has a lot of gauge, but Shield Knight is a bit out of position. Going to fix that, dropping her onto his space, draws for end of turn. It is now back to Dan. Oh, could this be the legendary EX Shiso Varaiken? So Dan's hand is empty, meaning this could be a free Ultra, and it is. It gets checked by the Grasp successfully. Because Dan has no cards in hand, however, he doesn't pay any gauge for this, so he's going to take 2 damage, loses Ultras, but spend no gauge. EX armor. Gonna wait and see if they fix it. Yeah. Alright. Well, that EX Ultra got stuffed, although at relatively minimal cost to Dan, and Shovel Knight did move Dan into Dan's favored range, at range 2. That said, that is also within range of Shield Boomerang, keeping that threat alive as well. Dan initiated, so it is Shovel Knight and Shield Knight's turn. So that was one of the Ultras that is free if Dan has no cards in hands. The other, we'll probably see at some point here. Alright, Shovel and Shield initiate. Dan is a critical wild swing. Koryukin, which will outspeed the Spike. Now, Koryukin has 1 power right now because of that critical, but it has a hit effect, which gives him plus 3 power for a grand total of 4. That will not stun the Spike, so they'll trade. Dan hits for 4 and takes 5. Alright. It is now Dan's turn. Fairly likely to critical wild swing here. Range 2 is his favorite range, and with no cards in hand, you can afford to pay the cost of an Ultra that he reveals, or, since it's a wild swing, he could invalidate it. Let's block. Well, +1 speed block means he wins the speed tie, which doesn't matter very much at all. Deciding if he spends force, he does spend for armor, so he'll take no damage. Shovel and Shield get an extra gauge and draw a card for landing that focus. Good for them, bad for Dan. Shovel and Shield's turn, they have a lot of resources. They're probably going to think about changing cards in the near future. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Wait, that was... Pretty sure they just spent 4 gauge. Just trying to preserve game state. Alright, Dan performs a critical wild swing at range 2. This is very, very threatening. Focus into cross. The cross will hit first, dealing 1 damage and backing up out of range. Very good for EXSK. Yep, these whiffs are costly because that means Dan basically isn't refunded his gauge. He also just drew a card, which could actually be very inconvenient. If he wants his ultras to be free, he needs to have no cards in hand. So unless that was an ultra and he plays it, they won't be. That was Dan's initiative, so it's now Shovel and Shield Knight's turn. Alright, Shovel and Shield initiate. Dan responds with the last card in his hands, or does he? Checking that gauge, probably weighing the danger of tandem attack, coming in and popping him for a clean 7 damage. Checking those discards to determine what his opponent has available. Counterpick the stage. Oh, is that you, Moriarty? Crafter of the playmats. Hey. This self-same fan was the designer of this playmat, which is, if it's not very, very obvious, unofficial. Yeah, for those not familiar with Exceed, we do not, in fact, have Pokemon. Sorry. Yet, anyway. Dan responds from hands. What'll it be? It is the tandem attack. Oof, that Spike just probably looking to get a card out of hand, although it would have beaten Shield Gong. Shovel's going to advance 2, because he moves into Shield Knight space. This attack will hit for 7, dropping Dan to 3 life. The advantage for Dan was he did manage to get that last card out of his hands. Excuse me, unfortunately his most threatening ultra at close range is Shisoburaiken, and both copies of that are already down. Do they even have a card game? Pokemon? Yes. Gonna assume that was, you know, a joke. Pokemon TCG is very much a thing. Although Exceed is not a TCG, so would be quite different. Alright, it's Dan's turn. Will this be a critical wild swing YOLO? Shovel and Shield only have 1 card left, and Dan can outstat them, especially, well, it depends on his on what's left in his deck. Choosing to take that reshuffle action, trying to get those Shisobraikens back in all likelihood. Draws for end of turn, which is the real inconvenience here. I'm supposed to be rooting for EXSK. I'm just a little overly sympathetic to Dan, because between the two of them, Dan is the one I play considerably more often. Alright, we have change cards, spinning 3, drawing a total of 4. Turn passes to Dan. So we're going to see probably a strike, a boost, or a move action. Could also choose to prepare, but that would be pretty unusual. Boost. Retreating 3 spaces, excuse me. Interesting, that puts him squarely in range of Shield Boomerang. But it does mean he's in range of hitting with Dan Kukyaku. Draws 1 card, responds, it's assaults, and it's cross. Okay. So Dan is faster, he will retreat out of range. Shovel Knight has a choice. He can advance, or he can close 2 or 3 spaces, chooses to close 3. This is because of Shield Knight's effect, once again. Oh, what do we have here? That is a critical wild swing. From range 3, odds are good that Dan can hit something that works, and depending on what Shovel Knight chooses to filter with his response, it's going to be explosive. It'll be explosive in all the wrong ways. Dan Kikaku advances 3. Because he moved past the opponent, he will whiff. But that put him in range of Shovel Knight's cross, meaning Dan will get hit for 3 and fall over dead. GG. That was an appropriately comical ending to a Dan game. Alright, let's update this. And it will go to game 3. There we go. You think it's Sagat coming up next, eh? Well, it's either Sagat or City and Serena. Shovel and Shield is out. So is Specter Knight. Sagat versus Seijun, you think? You think so too? Well, I guess I have to think differently then. Let's say it's SNS versus Seijun for maximum S. The letter S is prominently featured in this in this player matchup. Oh, Andrew Earl's Crazy Taxi, Matt? I've actually forgot about that until you mentioned it just now. That's not a bad idea. That, I don't think it is. Alright. Y'all called it. That is a Sagat and a Seijun. So the tiger and the fox. Alright, so Sagat is a resource-oriented keep-away zoner. Seijun is a resource-intensive boss fighter. Also generally a close-range heavyweight. So while in theory, Sagat should perform well against her character type, her ability to have all the resources forever and ever may make his life pretty difficult, as well as her passive guard from her character ability, making it hard for him to stun her with fast, light hits. This makes Tiger Shot in particular unsafe in the early game, which could be a problem for him. It's usually a very reliable opener. So Seijun is the first 7th cross character we've seen in this set. She has transformations, cards which, if she hits with them, or if she takes an action to discard one and play the other, permanently modify her character ability. They basically add on to it with other effects. Let's see, do they have a reference out? Yeah, it looks like they do. So if she hits with Foxfire, instead of adding to gauge, she may choose to instead gain Ninth Tail. You can only have one copy of a transformation in play, ever. So you know, if you hit with one, transform it, hit with the other one, well, that one goes to gauge. No choice about it. She has 5 of them, which is considerable. Alright, so she draws 2 additional cards in her starting hands. So she's going first, so she has 7. She gets to mulligan out of those extra 2 cards, which is pretty valuable, especially if she's going to dig for transformations. Most 7th cross characters like to get all their transformations into play over the course of a game because it expands their options, gives them a lot of tools to work with, and it tends to synergize very strongly with their Exceed ability. Seijun is no exception. Her Exceed ability, and her character in general, is all about drawing and having a lot of cards, and then her transformations give her ways to spin them. Seijun spins a force to advance 1. Draws for end of turn. Makes sense. At range 3, she threatens the Ink Spike Splash mix-up, which is... She has 2 attacks, 2 specials, I should say, that are range 1 to 3. One of them is Speed 4, with power equal to the number of cards in her hand, to a maximum of 7. And the other is Power 4, with speed equal to the number of cards in her hand, to a maximum of 7. So, moving in to threaten that mix-up, which she can play either side of, if she has them, of course. Looks like Sagat is considering a strike. Now, Sagat's ability is when he initiates a strike, he may set his attack face up. If he does, he has +1 speed. However, it doesn't really help him with breaking guards, so it is pretty risky in this matchup, because if Seijun sees his attack and can guard through it or outspeed it, or simply guard crush it, depending on what it is, well, she can win strikes cleanly, making his ability more of a liability than an advantage. Alright, Sagat boosts defend, giving him 1 armor, 3 guard on whatever his next strike may be. Seijun prepares, drawing to her maximum hand size of 9. So if she were to set 1 card from her hand, she would have an additional +4 guard on top of whatever was printed on the attack. It is Sagat's turn. In general, Seijun is weak against zoning, but Sagat relies on depriving his opponents of resources to make his zoning effective. Let's see how he handles it. No, I'm good either way, Moriarty. This is the last game of the 3. So I don't mind either way. Alright, Sagat strikes, 1 card, face down. Alright, plays a cross into a block. Clearly bait, hoping that she would set something which he would then be able to back out of. Not successful, however. He misses and retreats to the wall. Technically... Oops, forgot I had the music up again. Technically, his boost should drop first, then his attack. I'm not going to jump in for an infraction that minor, however. Just mentioning it for posterity. Seijun's at range 5, where she has literally nothing. So she'll probably either move, or just sit back and try to draw more cards. Moving is more sensible, because right now she is at risk of getting hit by Tiger Shot or Low Tiger Shot. That looks like a 2-force move action, going back to range 3, where her mix-up is live. Additionally, speaking of that mix-up, she now has 8 cards, so if she sets 1, she will still have the maximum stats of 7 power or 7 speed, depending on which side of it she plays. Amusingly, Seijun can potentially always have an answer to low tiger shot, because in Inari Guidance, one of her specials has before, you may advance as far as possible, and it is speed 4, making it faster even than face up low tiger shot. That said, it doesn't hit if she does that, because the printed range is 2 to 3. It's just a good way to avoid him. Oh, we have a reading. This is a very early reading, but Seijun does have a lot of cards in hand, so chances are decent that he can land it. Alright, what do we got? Looks like a success. Yeah, hits the grasp. Seijun's faster, but she misses. She takes 3. Sagat pushes her, adds top of his discard to his gauge and draws a card, giving him a little bit of extra gauge, which is pretty important. And pushing Seijun back 1 space yet again. So once again, technically that focus should have hit discard as soon as the reading was resolved, meaning it would be the card engage instead of spike. Ooh, that is very good for Seijun. Transforming Inari Guidance does mean that she is out that attack, which is a useful tool, especially against the Tiger Shot. But it lets her add extra range onto anything she wants by spending 2 force, which is arguably even more important. Sagat prepares. Yeah, so Seijun at range 4 is now effectively at range 3 if she wishes to be. She can hit with Assault, Spike, either of her ink mix-ups, although if she does try to land one of her, either side of her ink mix-ups, she won't have much left in her hands, so it won't be very useful at this time. Alright, Seijun preps, building that hand back up to 8. Seijun boosts for speed. Kind of an interesting play at range 4. He's only threatening... Well, I guess low tiger shot is actually very good here. Base up low tiger would be speed 5. Meaning there's really not anything Seijun could do about it. Except for... what, EX assault? And Seijun is good at digging up EX attacks, due to how many cards she can hold in hands. Alright, Seijun runs forward. Goes to range 2, which for her is just as good as range 1. Although it is more expensive than range 1. That said, the importance of being at range 2 instead of 1 here in particular is because as a heavyweight she doesn't want Sagat to run away. If she goes to range 1 and the Sagat boosts cross to advance 3 spaces, he's gained more distance than if she stays at range 2. Now if he plays cross, if he boosts with cross, he can only move to range 2, not gaining any actual distance. So this is a reason you will very commonly see heavyweights do this sort of thing, where they'll move to range 2 or 3 instead of 1, even though they prefer 1. It simply prevents the opponent from getting away as easily. Alright, Anger Charge. Fairly threatening. If his next attack is Tiger Uppercut, it has extra power, speed, and guard, and it's critical, which means it'll have a push effect on it. Tiger Uppercut is, it's an interesting attack. It doesn't actually benefit much from being faster, unless you have some power attacks on, because it has an effect that says after lose all armor, so he usually prefers to use it when he thinks his opponent will outspeed him, so that he can tank their hit and then hit back. However, if you have enough power, then being faster is obviously just better. So right now, let's see, Tiger Uppercut would be speed 8, power 6, with before close 1, hit push 2, that's the critical if I recall correctly, and after lose all armor. Oh yeah, and 3 armor, 5 guard for some reason. That's a bit extra. Yes, I am pretty confident she has dropped no copies of Focus yet. Yeah, Focus is basically the canonical hard counter to Tiger Uppercut. Alright, Seijun boosts defend. It is Sagat's turn. You may notice Sagat doing a lot more boosting. That's because Seijun, as a transformation character, doesn't actually have very many boosts. She has a boost on each of her ultras, but she has 5 transformations, meaning none of her specials have boosts on them. This makes her worse in neutral until she's built up a decent number of options with her transformations. And in her case in particular, only 2 of her transformations really help her in neutral at all. Sagat's initiating with a face-down strike. Looks like Seijun is checking those discards. Reviewing Sagat's options. The telegraph here is Tiger Uppercut. But as I said, excessive speed on Tiger Uppercut actually isn't all that helpful. This could just be a dive to get out of the corner. Oh, it is Tiger Uppercut. And there's Focus, the natural counter. Alright, well he has 6 power. Seijun will take 3 damage, dropping her to 24 life. His hit effect will fail, because Focus has opponents cannot move you on it. She will then hit him back for 4, because he lost all armor. So it is 26 to 24. Sagat's favor. Wrong way, Burgs. There we go. Alright. Does get him that 3rd gauge, which is important, because it means he can now exceed at will. Gets rid of one of her foci. It is now Seijun's turn, and they're at range 1. Sagat is actually a little bit better at range 1 than at range 2, generally speaking. Range 2 is arguably his least favorite range. Alright, transforming Meddlesome, the transformation on Yokai Banishing. So when Sagat plays a boost, she may discard a copy of the card. That means it's only relevant for normals, because of course she doesn't have copies of any of his... Okay, she chose not to discard a copy of Cross, evidently. But yes, if she had done that, then his boost would be discarded without effect, and he would stay exactly where he was. Hey Trev, good to see you. They're now at range 3, where Seijun is in pretty good shape considering her current hand size. She preps, maxing out at 9. Sagat preps in turn, bringing him to 7 cards. Hey Jay. We're on game 3. Seijun's turn. Seijun striking. Will she choose to spin force? She is in some danger here. She could trade down against... if she runs Ink Splash, she could trade down. If she runs Ink Spike, she can get stuffed. Alright, we have the defending Assault, probably calling a Spike or Dive play. Unsuccessfully. Sagat will take 4 and be stunned, as that is a 7-speed Ink Splash. That is the fast side of the mix-up. She still retains 1 copy of it and both copies of Ink Spike. Although, of course, we have no way of knowing if they're in her hands. She chooses to transform that. That is the other boost that I mentioned as being potentially useful in neutral. When using the prepare action, so after she draws a card with the prepare action, she may spend 1 force, and if she does, she moves 1 space. So it is a form of action compression, letting her rebuild and move, instead of just doing one or the other. That makes it Sagat's turn. It looks bad for him, but he still has both copies of Tiger Destruction in play, I believe. We have a reading. And face-up Tiger Shot. With critical. Interesting. The call is dive. He is successful. Huh. Yep. So he pushes her 1. He draws a card. She must discard a card of her choice. Yeah, this was almost certainly just a miscalculation by Sagat. Forgot that she would have enough guard to hit back. Sagat's hit effect gives him another card and builds one more gauge. Again, erroneously leaving that focus out of the discard, where it would have been in discards when the strike began. Seijun needs to pick up her dive and then advance. Right. They'll need to fish that out of discards in a moment here. And Sagat will take 5. Yep, it's possible he just was thinking that he'd already exceeded. Alright. Well, unfortunate for Sagat. Seijun chooses to exceed. So she has 3 transformations. Each transformation reduces her exceed cost by 2. Since her exceed cost was... shoot, was it 5 or 6? I forget. Either way. She has 3 transformations, so it's dropped to 0, so she can exceed at no cost. She also has when you exceed, draw 3 cards, and she'll then draw a card for end of turn. She'll now be drawing cards very regularly, but she no longer has access to the guard from her normal ability. The question is if Sagat can afford to just try to time her out. If he's careful, he might be able to filter Ink Spike, which is her biggest source of damage, and then tank the rest of her hits with cards like Tiger Uppercut, Block, and Focus. Although I believe we've seen both foci drop due to readings. That looks like an exceed, and it is. He draws 2 cards, retreats up to 2, and draws another for end of turn. Putting him at 8, he will have to discard 1. Seijun needs to draw for start of turn. Okay, there it is. It is Seijun, or should I say Kyubei no Kitsune's turn. Has a healthy hand of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cards. Striking with apparently 1 card. Looks like bait. Sagat responds with Assault, evidently hoping to catch an Ink Spike. Closes 2, has 4 power. Yeah, alright. She spends 2 force for 6 armor. Taking no damage. Evidently realized that was not efficient, but so it goes. It is now Sagat's turn. I'll just turn that back off. Now, Moriarty, I want to minimize disruptions. Like, it's pretty minor. Looks like Sagat is considering a boost. Yep. Seijun draws for start of turn. They're not at close range, which is very much a mixed blessing. Sagat is just probably better at range 1 than 2, or... no, he's definitely better at 3 than at 1. But Seijun cannot benefit from her extra range transformation at range 1, at least not really. So at least he doesn't have to play against that. Alright, looks like Seijun is boosting Heart of the Mountain. Never mind guard, she now has stun immunity and opponents cannot move past you. This is extremely threatening. She now potentially lands an inescapable Ink Spike. Even if Cross wasn't down, she could play Ink Spike and then spend Force for extra range. I think she dropped the other Tale of 7 Trials. If not, this would actually kind of telegraph a Tale of 7 Trials setup. On Sagat's side, I believe so. And she can't cancel it since both of her blocks are down. No, there's a parry. Probably going to call the Ink Spike. Oh no, Tale of Seven Trials. Alright. Yeah. Burgs realized one was in discard, I believe. Alright, slightly botched hand reveal. Happens a lot in Tabletop Simulator. They're just gonna pile that up and try again. Yeah. Burgs is just searching. I believe that was both Ink Spikes and an Ink Splash, but it was pretty quick, so I didn't get a good look. Here we go. 22457, Foxfire, Spike Spike Splash. Oh. 2457, Foxfire, Spike Spike Splash. Alrighty then. Wait, hold on. There's one card not accounted for. Well, maybe they just wrote it down wrong. Cuba needs to draw for start of turn. They're both called Tail. I believe you mean non-7 trials. So, the Tale of Nine Sorrows. Alright, we have Seijun striking with one card. The Ink Spike is fairly telegraphed here. Oh. Big trades. Alright, so they both spin their gauge for their ultras. She will hit for 9, and so will Sagat. Making it 12-8 in Seijun's favor. Alright then, that happened. Sagat's turn. That is one Tiger Destruction down. If he can boost the other, he may still have a shot here. Sagat, considering his options. we have a critical EX attack, but we've seen an uppercut and a low step kick drop, and it's not Tiger Shot or low Tiger Shot. So that only leaves Tiger Knee. It's either a bluff, or it's speed 4, power 6. It's, I'm surprised he's not setting it face up, but I guess he just wants to keep the bluff alive. Which could be important. That's true. This is known not to be cross, so the sweep is fairly safe on Seijun's part. If she calls the Tiger Knee, though, she can punish it pretty harshly with an EX Ink Spike. Which in turn might lose to something else. I'm really not sure. So importantly, knee gives advantage on hits, meaning the follow-up will go to Sagat. That's a big deal, because this means he is basically threatening to have a 2-turn kill combo if he can push out enough damage on the second hit. At least that's the threat. Ooh. Well, it is the sweep. That is going to make the next strike very unsafe for Sagat, as he hits for 6 and takes 5, dropping him to 3 life, where just about anything will blow him over. He does not get to push, he does get advantage, but he will lose a card from hand, which might cost him his follow-up. Technically, the EX copy should have dropped on reveal. If he had not set it face down, she would respond with EX Ink Spike and stun him and almost kill him. Takes out a spike. Well, at least we know that wasn't his follow-up. The crit was probably a mistake. Eh? Okay, it appears they've caught it. Oh, you're right, Mix. It pushes if the opponent is stunned. It is probably Sagat's least used critical, which is saying something. Did I just random Goth him twice in a row? There. Looks like Sagat preps. Seijun draws for start of turn. Seijun considering her options. What's really good for Seijun to do here? Boost if she has any left. EX Ink Spike is decent. If I defend, I would boost that. She could also just play a single Ink Splash and probably kill. We have block. Spending 3 force to take no damage. Wait, what? 1, 2, 3. That's no damage. Okay. I got it. Alright, well, Sagat blocked the kill shot. It is now Sagat's turn. Seijun has the transformation on Ink Spike in play, which will let her land a decisive kill, especially now that both blocks are down. However, she'll have to actually have an EX to make that matter. That is a reshuffle action by Sagat. Looking to draw back into some of those answers. Yep, this is what we call a defensive reshuffle. Not trying to be threatening, just trying to stay alive. Yep, reshuffle and pray. Alright. QB striking. 1 card. Scott Wild Swings. Gets a low tiger shot, which will get annihilated. Good game. Alright. Whew. What a set. Very closely matched players. Very closely matched teams. Nicely done. I'll just fill that in. Yep. Alrighty then. That will bring a close to this chapter of pool bouts, which are nearly at their ends. Soon we'll enter double elimination for Matchup Madness, the largest XP tournament of all time, at least so far. Run by Taxicab, primarily organized on the Level 99 Organized Play Discord, and featuring Exceed Fighting System. If you like the game or you're interested in what you see here, you can try it for free on Tabletop Simulator, which is not free, mind you. This module is called XFS Balanced Breakfast. I personally maintain it for competitive play and casual play alike. Hope y'all enjoy. Until next time, bye.